Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sensitive Podcast. I am your host, Kim Kimball, Somatic Leadership Coach for highly sensitive and neurodivergent women in business. Today, we have a very special episode about your relationship with money with financial therapist and author of the Art of Money books, Bari Tessler. I am going to allow her to introduce herself before we dive into this really exciting episode.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, Kim. It's wonderful to meet you and be with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Oh, a little bit about myself. Well, I'm mid-50s, menopause, yay, older mom of a 16-year-old, and I am a financial therapist. And I started out with a master's in somatic psychology. So my 20s were all about, working in the mental health field, working in hospice. I thought my topics would be sexuality and body and food and grief and death. And then my school loan came due, and all of a sudden I realized, wait a second, we never talked about money. How crazy is that? And I wound up doing my own money work and then pretty quickly creating and then running a bookkeeping business for a few years as an interim, yeah, for other coaches and therapists and artists. And I always say I learned more about people's relationship to money during those years I was 28 to 32 than if I had been a therapist. People just threw their books at me. They're like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. They didn't even know I had a master's in psychology. And then at the age of 32, so for almost 25 years, I've been teaching a financial therapy method, a somatic-based financial therapy method in small groups and very large groups online. And I've written 2 books, as you mentioned, I think you said, The Art of Money, A Life-Changing Guide to Financial Happiness, and The Art of Money Workbook. And I'm about to take a year-long sabbatical.
Oh, there was so much in there already. First of all, I'm a older mom as well. I had my son a few days before I turned 40, my first son.
Oh,
Um,
we're similar, 3 months before 40.
yeah, and so I know that people have lots of opinions on that, and people get to have lots of opinions, but I have personally really loved just being more grounded in who I am and what I can bring to motherhood. Granted, I think it's a lot more exhausting,
Yeah.
more than likely, trying to keep up with my son that way, but I didn't know that about you, so that was a fun little tidbit that I appreciate you sharing, and just really love hearing more about your background. And you've already mentioned some of this in my first question, but I just want to say that I love your work for a couple of different reasons. First of all, I believe that financial literacy for women is crucial for true empowerment because it impacts everything from overcoming gendered money beliefs to navigating our relationship with power and financial independence. And second, because I see that you've already touched on this, but financial advice so often just stays in the practical, like you were talking about when you were doing the bookkeeping. It's like, okay, everybody talks about the spreadsheets and the budgets and how to budget better and investment tips and all of these things, but no one's really addressing the emotional side, the psychological, the social dimensions that shape our relationship with money and really what money brings up for us in our bodies, which you have such a beautiful intersection of. You have such a holistic approach to this that I don't really see many places at all. So I'd love for you just to take a moment, if you're willing, to share more about how you came to this holistic approach to money and why you believe it's so vital.
Yes. So, as you mentioned, so many people teach about money and more of just the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about budgeting, the numbers, the spreadsheets, investments, paying down debt, end of story. And a few things, the only stat that I ever talk about is that 90% of our money decisions are based on our emotions. 90%. It might even be higher. Right? And so but I already knew that. I mean, I'm a somatic-based therapist, I went to school to learn how to remember to listen to my body's messages again. And so my whole method is integrating financial literacy, which was left out of our training growing up, and also emotional literacy that was left out of our training, and I would say somatic training and all, a lot of things that were left out. But for me, money was so emotional, and I didn't understand how that was being left out of the training. But I come from a therapy background, not a financial planner or accounting or estate planner background, right? So for me, when I was reading all the books, there's a few of them. Let's see if I can even remember. Jacob Needleman's book, Money and the Meaning of Life. That was one of the first books I read in the 90s and was blown away. I was like, wait, he's talking about the spiritual side of money and bookkeeping. Okay, mind blown. Um, Money or Your Life by Vicki Robbins, and I forget the other author who passed away, Joe Dominguez. And they were just talking about values. What are your true values and how do they show up in your earning and spending and saving and giving and investing and so on. For me, it was just a natural progression. I didn't seek out, I'm going to create a holistic approach. Everything about me, my undergrad was in a traditional University of Wisconsin at Madison. I studied history. Then I thought I discovered somatic psychology and dance movement therapy. I really did. I was traveling and I got this flash of, I grew up as a dancer. I'm really into psychology now, and I'm going to merge the two. And then I learned that there was graduate programs in somatic psychology, dance, movement therapy. I didn't make up anything. So my entire graduate school was steeped in Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy. We had to be our own case studies. We had to do our own work while we are learning to hold space for others. So I came out of that program with incredible life skills, incredible skills to be a parent, to all these things. But as I mentioned, we didn't learn anything about money. So when I was going to create a money method, which I needed, and I noticed everyone around me needed, no matter what economic class they came from, or lineage, or ethnicity, or part of the world, it just had to be imbued with all of the deeper meaning, the creativity, the rituals, and so on, that my entire graduate program in somatic psychology was imbued with. So if I was going to have a relationship with money personally, I had to merge heaven with earth. I had to, make everything I was doing more interesting, more creative, um, more deeply meaningful. And then, there was one day where I had a mentor. So I was still, had the master's in psychology, moved over to bookkeeping business, was doing bookkeeping for folks. And I had a mentor who basically said to me, it's time for you. Now she would sit us down. First, she would sit us down in a group of women, and she had us print out one of our reports just for the month, a profit and loss just for the month. And then we all passed it around and shared it with each other. And I remember we all felt like we were getting naked. I was sweating. It was 1 month of numbers, So she was having us do exercises like that. And then because of my background, what I came from and what I was doing, she just said, young lady, and I was 32, it's time for you to give a talk on your money method. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I went into the woods and I went on one of my long walks with the trees. And I just said, what am I supposed to bring back to my community? How do we have more mindful relationships to money, or more savvy, or more empowered? I don't know what exact words I used at the time. Probably, how do we become more conscious? How do we, and I just got all this information and ran back home and was living in a tiny cabin with my husband in the woods at the time. He noticed something was actively going on and threw up white paper. And we came up with the 3 phases: money healing, money practices, money maps. We called it something different. We called it financial therapy, values-based bookkeeping, and life vision planning. But it's basically money healing, money practices, money maps. That's what I call it today. And this was my 3-phase method that I started teaching, in 10-person groups in 2001. That grew to 500 people. But so it just was innately a holistic method. It's about past, present, future. It integrates doing deeper healing, money work not versus, integrating, adding in, how do you create self-care money practices, and how do you learn a bookkeeping system, and how do you rename everything, from how your expense categories to your debt categories. We can talk about that more, to what phase of life are you in and where are you going. And so for me, I think I was just imbued in holistic, right? Holistic health, holistic everything. So if I was going to create a method for myself and then bring it to my community, it just had to have all the different parts. And it doesn't mean you have to be in the money healing forever. At some point we move on to the money practices, and it doesn't mean you're done with money healing once you move to money practices. But once you've learned some somatic tools to help you calm down, in the middle of a, money discussion with a new financial planner or with a new bookkeeper, or when you go online to do some online shopping. We're not always trying to calm down. That's not always the goal, but just to notice what's going on in my mind and my body and my sensations and all of these different moments. So I'm kind of answering that with a few different threads here. It was just innate to my training at that time. It's how I work. I knew I was integrating financial literacy and emotional literacy. But I'll tell you one more piece of this. The very first night, which might lead to your next question, but the very first night that I taught my first three-phase methodology in a tiny group of 10 people in a circle in my living room in an apple orchard in California in 2001, we sat down and I'm like, okay, everyone, we're going to talk about family history and go into your mom's relationship to money and your dad's or your other moms or your grandparents or your siblings. And I noticed everyone was starting to shut down. Everyone was starting to go into a fight, flight, freeze response. And all of a sudden I realized, what am I doing? I just spent a decade training as a somatic therapist, and I'm not prepping everyone. I'm not giving anyone a somatic tool to stop, slow down, pause, check in with what's happening in their body on all these different levels. And then we can talk about family history and get into it. But we need a somatic tool first and foremost. So I'll just end with, it wasn't this conscious thing. I'm going to create a holistic method. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to, create a whole financial therapy field. By the way, my husband named it financial therapy. And I was like, "What did you say?" I was like, "Oh my God." And I went online to look to see if anyone was using that term. And 2001, no one was. There was one other bookkeeper in Canada and we connected, but the whole financial therapy field didn't really get created until 2008, 2009. But I've been doing this work in my version, in my way, since 2001. So I'll pause there.
Hmm. A couple things stood out for me from what you shared. The first of which is, uh, uh, I think a beautiful reminder for any business owner, and that is your answer of like, how did you come up with this holistic approach? Is it's just an extension of who I am.
Yes.
That's what I heard. This is just an extension of who I am as a person in really every area of my life. And I think that can be such a beautiful reminder for all of us as business owners as we're crafting our own offerings. Just allow them to be extensions of who you are. That's all we're doing here. And it really sounds like this was something that was, I'll use the word channeled. I don't know if that resonates with you, but it sounds like, your walk with the trees and just really, it was a deep embodied tuning in to what was here and what message wanted to flow through you. And again, I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's such a beautiful thing for all business owners to keep in mind. It's like you created this entire field of financial therapy, but you did it because it's an extension of who you are and the way you operate in the world. So that's the first thing. I really appreciate the beauty of you sharing that here. And then the second piece is just, I just feel like it was a huge mic drop moment for you to say, 90% of how we spend money is based on our emotions. I'm like, well, we could just stop right here, and end the call. We could end the call right here just with that factoid. But all of these other approaches that are holistic in nature, they don't take that into account. So then you're working with the 10%, right? And that's not going to get you very far. You're just going to feel like you're spinning your wheels. And then the problem that I see, which is very related to highly sensitive and neurodivergent folks, is we make ourselves the problem. What happens then is then it creates more of these money stories of I'm bad with money, I'm bad with money. But as you haven't been given the proper tools, right, to actually deal with the emotional side of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say most of us, if not all of us, were not given a complete money education, financial literacy education from grade school and up in small increments, right? I had one accounting class in high school that kind of went in and out. I kind of remember it. My son did, though, have a great personal finance class in high school a few years ago, freshman year, and he loved it and came home and was talking with me about compound interest and, you know, I mean, they weren't really getting into money emotions, but still, they had a personal finance class, right? So that's really good. Um, so yes, that's so important for us to know and to say it over and over and over. We were not given a financial literacy education. Neurodivergent, sensitive or not, like we were all as a whole, we were not given a financial literacy education. So we're learning it as adults at all different ages. And my community is 25 to 85. Really, and then across the board.
Yeah.
Across
It's
the
amazing that your son got that. I remember that I felt like the most useful class I had in my entire high school was keyboarding.
Mm.
It's my one class that I'm like, this was a genuinely useful life skill that I was given
Yes.
because I don't have to look down and peck on my keyboard, and I'm on my keyboard all day. And it's like, man, if somebody had actually done the financial education as you're talking about with your son, even better. So that's amazing. I hope people start moving in that direction. But
Yeah. I want to say one more thing. So years ago, I was interviewed, and I'm interviewed a lot, as you said, and for years. And she's a financial influencer, and she does great interviews, and she's very well known. But I remember her years ago when I was just talking about money and emotions. She said something like, "Wow, Barry, you're really woo woo," and I was like, woo woo because I'm talking about emotions. Like, really? Like I'm a therapist. I'm a psychotherapist trained. So, yes, it's all about emotions and feelings and what's going on. And one of my funniest negative book reviews was from a guy who did say, the author acts as though everyone has really big emotions around money. It's like, hello, did you get that the author is this trained therapist? So, yes, in my world, this is what I'm seeing. And there are a few folks, or a small group of folks where this is more black and white. The numbers come easy, it's natural, they're really good with spreadsheets. But even that, I had a financial planner come to me years ago and say, numbers are really black and white to me. I started out Wall Street, I've moved on. Then I was in banking, and then I am now a financial planner. And then she came to me to understand why it's so emotional for everyone else in her life and why there was hoarding with her mom and so on. And we got in there, and guess what? She had her own deep emotions and money stories to work through. It wasn't just everyone outside. She had her own stuff as well, like we all do. We all have strengths around money. We all have challenges around money. We all have weird stuff around money. Many of us start with money shame, which is that you already mentioned it. I'm not okay. Something's wrong with me. Everyone else learned about this except for me. If I just come from a different family, if I was just a different personality type, if I just wasn't neurodivergent, whatever it is, it's for me, shame is usually the first money emotion that does come up for so many of us. And it's like this heavy cloak that we have to befriend and understand what is it. And that's when there's so many antidotes um to overcoming money shame, right? Or to unraveling, to unhooking money shame. And it's everything from one honoring that none of us received a money education. And so we're learning this as adults. It's not easy, it's uncomfortable. But also to really get in there and understand more of what we are doing well with money already. Because everyone comes in telling me that they suck. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And then we start making lists of like, oh, well, I'm a really good tipper. Or I was a single mom and I raised my son. He's now in his 20s. He's a wonderful young man. I raised him on my own. I did a damn good job. So there's lots of things that we can add to the list of what we are doing well. And yes, then there are things to work on and fine tune, until the day that we die. So I'm going to pause there again.
yeah, well, no, that leads directly into my next question perfectly. If I was going to talk to you about money shame, and
Okay.
like you mentioned, obviously, so many people experience that this deep, deep sense of like I'm bad with money, or why can't I get my mess together, or why can't I figure it out, of why does everyone else have this all figured out and I don't, whatever that story around that shame money story may be. And I know you suggest that these emotions show up physically and that healing involves addressing not just thoughts, but the body sensations that accompany them. And I'm curious how you would guide someone to release money related shame through the body and replace those patterns with healthier responses.
That's great. I don't know if I look at it as releasing. So I mean, but that's a fine way of looking at it. It's going to be different for all of us. For someone, it might be like, I need to release this. For someone else, it may be, I need to get to know this or befriend this or understand this in a deeper way. So I'll talk about two things, a little bit of the one somatic tool, the body check-in. I guess I didn't really clarify it, and then money stories a little bit. So that very first evening, my first class in 2001, when everyone was starting to shut down, and I realized I haven't even shared a somatic tool. So the very next week, the first somatic tool that I brought to everyone is what I call a body check-in. And everyone kind of does this already in their own way. If you have a meditation practice or you just stop and center or, so one of my versions, and there's no right way, there's no one way, there's no wrong way to do a body check-in. And it could be 5 seconds, it could be 5 minutes. But a body check-in is before a money conversation or in the middle of one or after a money purchase or decision as a debriefing, then we ask ourselves to stop and pause and check in. We can close our eyes or if that feels good or leave them open. And it's just asking ourselves to check in, to be curious, to notice on a few different levels. It could be one level. So it could be on a physical level, what am I noticing right now in my body? Are my legs crossed? Is my back upright? Are my shoulders up? Are they down? Just noticing on a physical level is a body check-in, right? Another version of a body check-in, or sometimes I do a few different levels when I'm checking in, is the next one could be, what are the sensations in my body right now? Am I feeling hot, heat? Am I feeling cold? Am I feeling tightness? Am I feeling some movement or sensation of butterflies or, just some people get what sensations are and other people are like, I don't understand what that means at all. So move on to another level. And another level is, what's the feeling right now? Is it shame? Where do I feel that in my body? And how do I notice that? Do I notice a tightness in my heart, chest area? Do I notice a fluttering in my stomach area? Do I just notice that my shoulders are up to my ears and I'm holding my neck and shoulders really tight? So is there an emotion that's present, whether it's shame or anger or anxiety or sadness or grief or hope or excitement, right? Or joy or possibilities or, those aren't all emotions, but those are all, related to what comes up around our relationship to money. So just notice if there's an emotion or feeling there. The next level that I sometimes check in on, or this is one of my go-tos, is where's my breath in my body? So is my breath hanging out my neck and kind of stuck up there? Or is it down in my chest or even down all the way in my belly? And just notice where it is in my body and how deep or how shallow, and just notice and be curious. And so those are the levels that I'm always checking in on. So a physical level, sensation level, emotional level, breath level. But then when I finish a body check-in, I'm always going to end it with asking myself and inviting in, what is one little adjustment that I can make right now to help me feel more present in my body, mind right now, to help me feel more okay, or add in whatever adjective you want. And so for me, that's how I've always ended my body check-ins. And I trained in the 90s. So Peter Levine's somatic experiencing work, his first book came out when I was graduating. We weren't using his language then. But that's more common known language. So people call it resourcing. So you end a body check-in with, what is one little adjustment that I can make right now to help me feel more present or okay in my body or right now? And that could be, oh, I'm going to lower my shoulders a little bit and do a little shoulder shimmy. I'm going to see if I can get my breath deeper down in my belly. Or, oh, I'm going to put my hand on my chest because That's where I'm really feeling things. There's hundreds of different ways that you could resource in moments like this, but that's a little bit about how I do a body check-in and invite my folks to do a body check-in. There are so many different daily money moments that happen really every day, right? Money discussions, money decisions, money purchases. So I'm inviting body check-ins before you're going to have a money conversation with your spouse, with your kids, with your parents, with your clients. Or you forget to do before and you remember in the heat of the moment. And you're like, whoa, my breath is going out the top of my body, or I'm really angry right now, or what is going on? Like, do I need a break to go walk around the block? Do I need a bathroom break? Do I need a snack? Do I need to drink some water? What's going on? And then I always after I've made a money purchase, after, no, whether it's like I'm at the thrift store for clothes or we bought a car or, I'm doing body check-ins before, during, and after as a debriefing. What am I feeling now? How did that money conversation or decision go? What would I do differently moving forward? So there's so many different ways to do a body check-in. And it's something to invite in. Like, I'm going to start doing this on a daily basis and try to remember before or during or after. But for me, this is also a way to start gathering information. Awareness leads to understanding, leads to change around our money stories. So I'm always asking myself when I'm doing a body check-in is, does this remind me of anything? What does this remind me of? And some people, and for myself, I'll sometimes get a memory of something my parents went through, or my mom paying the bills at the kitchen table, being pretty anxious about it. Or not all of us have memories in that way or images, but some of us do. So we can always ask ourselves that. And the body check-in is a practice. It's not one and done. Every time it's different. It's an ongoing daily practice that eventually helps us understand more about what our money story is. And so for me, it's meeting the emotions, it's being present with them, it's befriending them. So it's giving everyone tools to meet the money emotions that are coming up. And the money emotions are the same set of emotions that come up in every area of our lives, right? I thought they were different, or would be, when I first started doing this work, but they lead us to understanding more of our money story. Now, I'll say one more thing about money. I can talk a lot about money story, but it's an ongoing thing. It doesn't mean we figure out a money story, we figure out parts and pieces and maybe the overview of it. We can even do an autobiography of our money story, but there's still things to uncover later in life. I'll give one story about this, okay? So, and I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't believe that we could rewrite our money stories and that that wasn't a really important piece for me. So you talked about releasing, and it's similar, it's just different language. It's more of meeting the emotions, naming them, sitting with them, befriending them, and then moving into, what does this remind me of, or where does this come in my money story? But then it's, as we move forward, what parts of my parents' money relationship do I want to keep doing? Which ones do I want to let go of because they're harming or not serving me in my relationships anymore? And which ones do I totally just want to change, or which ones am I rebelling against? So it is a bit of rewriting a money story or updating financial identities. So here's a little story, and I know I might be answering a few of your questions at once, but so as a kid, early on, I'm the oldest of three, the financial identity that I was given was the spender. I wanted things, I liked things. I wanted dance classes, I liked the dance outfits. I wanted to buy my mom a ring at the school fair. I liked candy. I just had a lot of passion and desires. I was given the diagnosis. That's interesting. I was given the label of I'm the spender, where my younger siblings, they were more frugal ones, the savers. My younger brother had a bank early on. I was more like my dad. My younger siblings were more like my mom. There was definitely like, oh, it's better to be a saver than a spender, right? So for me, I both like that's who I was, my personality, but it took me until my 30s, because in my 20s I was getting the master's degree, making $11 an hour working in the mental health field, even with the master's degree. So it wasn't until I started my own business, right? And I doing bookkeeping and then beyond that I started making beyond my basic needs, right? And I taught myself how to save. and be a saver as well. So I'm totally generalizing right now, but there's many different ways to start understanding our money story. One of them is through archetypes, like I'm a spender, I'm a saver, I'm a hoarder, there's many people who do money archetype work, right? There's also my favorite is the Enneagram. That's we can if you know the Enneagram, I love talking about that. That's a great personality system to help you understand your money story better. Right? So there's many different ways on your money story, but this simple one of just are you more of a spender, more of a saver? It doesn't you can be a healthy spender and a healthy saver. You can be an unhealthy spender and spend too much. You can be an unhealthy saver and save too much. Be so frugal that you're not enjoying life. You can really go to the extremes of either. So at some point, rewriting stories or updating financial identities, I know this is a simple version of it, but even me in my 30s teaching myself how to save, which is hard for a lot of people. They're afraid to think about the future. Money comes in, they want to spend it right away. There's so much psychology behind all of that. They don't know how to just even begin to ritualize tucking money away. But my husband and son, they see me as the squirrel, even though they know I enjoy. I'm the squirrel. I'm the one who tucks money away. So you can update financial identities, learn new practices, learn new money skills and life skills as we go. I have so many more examples. So that's a simple one. But again, but it's first body check in, leads to awareness, leads to understanding, leads to learning more about our money stories. And then there's a lot more work to be done there in the money healing section, right, of my method. But all of that work leads to rewriting money stories.
Hmm. Thank you for giving us such practical, tangible things to sink our teeth into of those body scans. And it just really hits me, which is no surprise based on your work, but it's an invitation to stay in relationship with yourself
Yes.
when you're relating with money, right? Rather than I think so many of us, which again, it's so understandable, but I know I can have this tendency as well, this tendency to just dissociate when I have anything to do with money. It's like, let me just leave my body right now
Okay.
because it's bringing up so much anxiety for me,
Yeah.
right? And so it's this beautiful and gentle invitation to, okay, let me just get curious about what this is bringing up for me on all of these different levels that you spoke about. And the other piece that came up as you were speaking is it feels like that awareness, as you were saying, can gently start to reshape the relationship that you have with money if you're bringing in that resourcing, if you're bringing in this gentle connection with yourself again and again around money, because it can become such a habitual pattern of, yeah, anytime I'm having a money conversation, I'm going to dissociate, or anytime I'm doing anything with money, I'm going to have this massive anxiety come up, or anytime my partner and I have a money conversation, we're going to get into a massive fight because we're both just in fight or flight or whatever it is, right? So just that invitation to remaining in relationship with yourself as you are relating to the money, and that leading to the repatterning of the money stories as well, and the healing of the money stories as well.
Yes. Yes. Beautifully said. We all have money patterns and habits and behaviors that are working and that some are not working. And, this is all normal. Or in relationships, no two people come in having, on the surface, we fall in love, we're attracted, we have the same values. And then at some point, we realized, oh my God, we're so different, that moment. And oh my God, we're so different around money, the way we earn or spend or save or give. And so there's always these dynamics that are created for a while that are happening that are unconscious. And it's so important to start to bring our attention to them, to learn about them. And we all have different go-tos. You just told me what your go-to was, which is I go, I go this way and I'm gone, We're all so different. Some of us get really angry and pissed. There's so many deeper themes that come up around money. I know we've so much to talk to about today, so I'm gonna
Mm.
just pause there before I
Yeah, I'm going to take a bit of a rabbit trail because you really piqued my interest with the Enneagram and the money stories.
Yes.
Did not plan on talking to you about that, but I'm huge on the Enneagram. I love it. That's like my preferred. It's not even a person. I wouldn't call it a personality typing. Really, a way to understand, deeper way to understand yourself. But I am a Enneagram 6,
Okay.
wing 7. And so as you were sharing this, I'm like, and the connection to the money stories, I'm like, oh, that brings me more understanding of why I have likely a fear-based relationship with money, because that's the primary thing for an Enneagram 6, right? Is that fear-based, and will lead to the dissociation around it. But I'm curious if there's anything else that you want to share around the Enneagram and the money stories.
Yes, I mean, I've been studying the Enneagram since my 20s when a therapist told me what I was, which you're not supposed to do, right? You're not supposed to type anyone else. We're supposed to come to it ourselves, but she was totally accurate, and that's okay. And there's only one money an Enneagram book that's self-published that came out in something like 2020. That's good. It's more academic, comes from a financial planner. But there's some good stuff in there in between all the, academic stuff. And I was partnered with someone. We even got a book agent to do a money and Enneagram book. And then we both got a few months in and realized we have really different creative styles and we're at different phases in our lives. And we stopped the project. But what I love about, if you know and love the Enneagram, you're already in there comfortable, you already know your type, even if you don't, but there's just more to learn about your relationship to money. I have a few interviews where someone asked me, I was like, oh, I hope he's not going to ask me to riff on each type and what I think about their money habits and behaviors, but that's exactly what he did. And that interview you can find on my site. And I'm forgetting the Typology podcast. That was the name of the podcast that I did. I mean, sixes, my financial planner is a 6, and you want a financial planner who's a 6. They, fear-based, yes, but you guys plan out for all the worst case scenarios. So that's your challenge. That's your strength. Yeah, that's your gift. You want someone who's planning out all of the worst case scenarios to be
I'm laughing in case you guys can't hear. I'm laughing. Yes. Yeah.
to be a financial planner, right? Or what, like, so there, again, there's strengths and challenges to all of it. We need to understand it. And are we in a healthy place or unhealthy place around it? Also, whatever type we are, we have both wings. One might be more dominant, but we're both. We need both wings, right? So I think old school was you have one wing, but it's really we're two. So if you're 6, you're 7, and you're 5 are going to be important to you. I mean, I could riff on each type, but I'm an Enneagram 4 and, any type 4. So everything, my work, my life, everything needs to be deeply meaningful, based in ritual, creative, and we're deeply sensitive, right? And so even our work needs to be at that, our money relationship. So also, why did I create the method I did? Because I'm an Enneagram 4. So my entire method is an Enneagram 4 type of method. Um, you know, I do think without riffing on each type,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing if you know your Enneagram type to go to it and just to help you understand even more what your money habits and behaviors are and how they affect your money relationship in a positive and negative way. What's challenging for you? I'll give you a few more examples. Sevens, everything's, it's all about possibilities for them. So their answer to everything is like, make more money. It's always like, don't look at the numbers. Don't get nitty gritty in the bookkeeping. Why would I ever do that? That feels awful. And they really need to get in there, whether they're doing the bookkeeping on their own, which is maybe too painful, but get a bookkeeper and meet with them monthly to just start peeking at what your numbers are. And I love the make more money, but that's not going to resolve anything. I know too many sevens that, their answer is make more money, but which is wonderful, but that's just one piece of it. Enneagram 5s, I'll just give a few more. My husband's an Enneagram 5, and when I first met him, he had a little piece of paper that he would write down his 5 expenses on. He kept his life so simple, so minimalist. He had no needs, no, and so an Enneagram 5 needs to work on. Now, their strength is like they can live a really, really simple life, but we need to help them expand that a bit to include other humans. You need other humans to support you, and it's good to make more money. Why? And what are you going to do with that money? So we're also different. But the other thing about the Enneagram that I found so helpful about understanding our money relationship is understanding our siblings' money relationship and our parents' money relationship and everyone around us and our partners. So I've used it as a tool to learn the Enneagram enough so that not so you're typing everyone and going after them, going, you're a 5, you're a 2, but it can help you have more understanding, compassion for everyone around you. So I had an Enneagram 2 client who is an Enneagram 8 sister. And the Enneagram 8 sister is the one who keeps wanting to run the show because they're the leaders. They are good leaders. That's their strength. But their challenge is they can be really intense and come in really hot and heavy and come in, this is how we're doing money, instead of leaving any room for collaboration, bringing in others. And my Enneagram 2 person needed a different approach, a softer approach. She needed a lot, but even understanding that her sister was an Enneagram 8 helped her just understand more how to relate to her. So I think it's a great tool for money relationships with the people closest to us. I had such so here's another piece about money stories. It's about money because we didn't receive a financial education in small increments that we've said like 3 times already, right? So it's about money where there's things to learn. We got to learn a bookkeeping system. We got to learn a little bit about taxes. We got to learn, right? There's things to learn. It's not about money at all because it's about the deeper themes that come up, not just the money emotions that come up, but deeper themes like safety and trust and our value and worth and responsibility and power dynamics and so on. So my father, Enneagram 8, me, Enneagram 4, we had a lot of power dynamics. He used power over, grew up in a middle class family. And so there's a lot of generosity. And at the same time, there are a lot of strings attached that weren't always clearly spoken to until I'd crossed the line. And I didn't even know what the line was, or I didn't even know what the limits were. And my dad definitely used money as a brokering power tool. And so that was the theme of money dynamics was something that I had to really work on unraveling, uncovering, releasing, getting out, doing, changing, rewriting, that's my word, doing it different. So that I move from power dynamics of power over and power under to what is empowerment? What is true empowerment for me? But as a teenager, I definitely made declarations because of those power dynamics. Like, I'm never relying on a man. I'm never getting married to a man. I'm always going to make my own money, right? And then later I was like, okay, what's serving me? What's not? Do I like making my own money? Yes. But, so just things I declared that later I had to unravel and go, what's really true and what's working for me. So those are some of the deeper money themes that do come up as we're exploring money stories as well. But that also get in there in our Enneagram type. So it's so helpful to learn what was my mom? What was my dad? What's my partner? And so on.
I just love this lens. I've done a good bit of Enneagram work and I've never thought about it, pairing it with money work and the depth that would come through looking at your relationship with money through, the Enneagram and understanding yourself and understanding other people in your life and their relationship with their money in that way. So I just really appreciate you taking a moment to elaborate on this. That's really gives me something to dig into and get excited about as well.
Wonderful.
I want to talk about two really common money patterns that I see specifically in business owners. And the first is, people being so gung ho to make 6 and 7 figures. And I'm going to make kind of like what you were speaking to, like with the sevens, like, I just want to make boatloads of money and that's going to solve everything. But then it just runs through their hands and they can't hold on to it. Right. And so I know there's no one size fits all to this. There's no one thing that we can point to and say, this is making you in your relationship with money have a hard time holding on to money. But what have you found in general that tends to prevent people from being able to hold on to money?
Ooh, let's see. I wrote a piece on this a month ago because I gave a big talk in my alma mater, and a few people wrote in questions afterwards, and this was one of them. This is not just with business owners. This is just folks in general,
Yeah.
So here's a few things. One is people being people not believing that there's a future. And this can show up in all different ways, like terrified to think of the future. They were taught not to dream, or dreams were squashed, or taught not to vision early on. Um, or some people is for religious reasons. The apocalypse, like, is coming or going to happen, or um, just, there's been research done that even in our language compared to Japanese language, like there's not a lot of future. We're very much like now, 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 now. So for some of us, it's just how do we even think about the future, allow ourselves to dream, think about the future, plan. So we're into past and present, but not future. So that's some. So I'm just going to spend it all now. I'm just going to get rid of it all because there might not be a future, right? So that, or I'm going to die early, or like I can go on. There's so much about that. Then there's like the energy of it. Like money's coming in. I've made more than I thought I would. I've made more than I ever have. Or I'm just getting a chunk of money right now. I have no idea how to hold on to it, like a hot potato. Like this, the somatic energetics of it. Too much energy, too much. What do I do with this? Like do a feast and famine. Money, let's just get rid of it, There's that. So how do you teach people to sit in the energy of enoughness, of extra, of setting up some containers, right? Whether it's bookkeeping systems or extra savings account that have intentions. I like to rename things. So instead of just emergency funds, why name it that? I mean, emergencies happen, like life happens. I'd rather call it life happens, or I'm setting up an extra savings account for cash flow because it's nice to have extra cash flow when life happens, or for future things like travel, more short term, travel fund, or even longer term, like years ago I wanted to buy a house, right? And then we did, right? So there's you can start setting up containers. Other people feel like, well, I don't want to be on a rigid, tight budget. That's like being on a rigid, tight diet. I want to do whatever I want. I want to be free. And it's this extra energy. So is it helpful to contain some of it, to tuck some away for future when we need it, when life happens? Because life's going to happen. Curveballs are going to happen. So setting up containers, that's where I love bookkeeping systems. I love tracking systems. Learning how to do it on your own, even for 6 months or a year, is an incredible mindfulness practice. Or you hire a bookkeeper and you do it with them. So many of my folks are terrified of the numbers. Terrified to peek, to look, There's one more here. What is it? I've had people that came from wealthy families that were given an inheritance, and there's so many reasons why they don't want the money, or they'd rather have the person who died, a dear family member died and they got this money. They don't want the money. They want the person alive, and they're in deep, deep bereavement. Or they had such a painful relationship with the person who died and passed on these resources that they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with it, or how the money was made, or I'm going to be in therapy for the rest of my life. So there's just so many layers to this. So it's both somatic layers of how do you cultivate more capacity for enoughness and even extra, and what does that look like and feel like in your body? And then how do you start ritualizing some really practical things? So the thing with entrepreneurs, though, is that we're afraid of, if you come from a therapist background like me, we weren't taught any of the business skills. So bookkeeping, spreadsheets, accounting, taxes, marketing, sales, it was all like bad words, instead of, we need to learn this. We need to get savvy in this. And it's hard for anyone to ask for help. I know so many high earning women that have such a hard time to ask for support. There's a whole financial support team of bookkeepers, financial coaches, financial planners. Oh, I devoted a whole chapter in my book to what are the different players, because I didn't know, I didn't know the difference between a bookkeeper and a financial coach and a financial planner and estate planner. So I describe and define what all these different roles are, questions to ask when hiring them. What do they do? How can they support us? And then we need people like that on our team, not all of them at once, but as we can afford them, right off the bat, I needed a bookkeeping trainer. I mean, when I was learning bookkeeping, someone sat me down, held my hand metaphorically and literally, and taught me QuickBooks. And along the way, I needed crying breaks, so tissue breaks and chocolate breaks. And I needed a slow, steady teaching of how to learn a bookkeeping system like QuickBooks. My husband taught himself one night how to use Quicken, just so tech savvy, right? Doesn't mean he doesn't have his own money emotions or stuff. So this is where a lot of entrepreneurs need to set up a bookkeeping system right away. Get some help with setting up a bookkeeping system, knowing how to categorize everything, and then getting a tax person that they can feel comfortable with. They don't need to be your best friend, but you are sharing your numbers with them. That is vulnerable. You have to like them. You have to feel somewhat safe with them. So pick a good person and pick someone who has, this is new to a lot of them, but a lot of bookkeepers and anyone on my referral list, or, there's a lot of folks that realize that 90% of our money decisions are based on our emotions. And I know so many financial planners that are realizing, wait, do I need to be a therapist along with being a financial planner? So they're all learning more about the emotional side as well and incorporating that in. So find a financial support person who understands, right? Who won't be your therapist and can't be your therapist, but at least can hold that this is uncomfortable and hard for you while they're supporting you on getting your taxes done or things like that. So entrepreneurs need support people to sit them down and teach them how to set up a bookkeeping system and how to learn how to navigate it around and learn their numbers. What's working? What's not working? How is cash flow coming in? What's my rhythm? Am I making, enough each month? What about, can I move to, I want to make money every 3 months or eventually 6 months? How do we move into more sustainable income? Or is our income seasonal? Okay. Well, are we landscapers? Are we in real estate and we get a chunk of cash that we have to make work for the next 6 months? So what is the rhythm of how you bring in your income? What are your revenue streams? How do you adjust it? But the way in is setting up a bookkeeping system, understanding your numbers, befriending them, getting more savvy, feeling more empowered there. When I learned bookkeeping, it was one of the most empowering things I did for myself as a woman, for myself as a business owner. And it leads to, where do I want to go? Where do I not want to go? And, we can throw out, I want 6 figures or 7 figures, but a little story is that years ago, I was in, I think, the third year of my business, and I took a green business class with my financial planner, Christopher Peck, in California way back in the day. And we had to create a business plan. And I hated all the parts of the business plan, like the marketing and except the numbers. I love the numbers. And I showed up with my fabulous set of projections. And he looked at them and he was like, these are great numbers, Barry. But what is your life actually going to feel like? And what is your life actually going to look like? And what's the reality behind these numbers? Now, you won't know that until you go through the year. So the numbers tell a story, but they don't tell the full story. Are you a new mom? Are you having health stuff going on? Are you, are you trying to move from a, corporate job to your own business, vice versa? Like what's going on? What else? Are you caretaking parents? There's so much that's going on that's not tracked in those numbers, but the numbers do tell a story and they are so important. So I've always been weary of just throwing out, I want to make 6 figures or 7 figures. It's like, okay, what do those numbers mean? What does it look like? Let's break that down and see. And then what does your day to day, week to week, month to month feel like? And how does that feel for you? And also then what are you going to be doing with those resources? Not, just hitting a milestone just to hit a milestone. So,
Mm. Yeah, I love that. yeah, 6 to 7 figures is great, but how do you feel as you're earning that? What does your life look like? Does your life actually look like you want it to like look like? There's so many people that hit those numbers and then they're like, wait, I'm actually miserable. This actually, my life looks, I have the numbers and I have the financial provision, but I spend no time with my child, for example, or my relationship with my partner is faltering because we have no time together and I can't take a moment away from my work or whatever it is, right? And so really asking yourself that question is so important. And if we're not asking that question again, we could really be leading ourselves astray and just chasing a shiny object that ultimately isn't providing any sort of fulfillment.
No, it's an Enneagram 4 for me, those numbers are interesting, but not that interesting. Where an Enneagram 3 really equates their self-worth with their net worth with their self-worth. And they have to really, really, really work with that, right? So we're all a little different. But I'll give you one more equation. I know we're coming to the end of how I look at this. And I'll say, as a business owner, not every year are we earning more, saving more, giving more, investing more, etc. Those are great years, exciting years. But again, you got to see what's going on behind the scenes. Are you missing out on being with your children as much as you want to? Do you need more attention with your health, right? So I always want to say there's going to be ebbs and flows in life. There's going to be ebbs and flows in money as well. And that, I was on this trajectory of growth for many, many years. And then we decided to have a son or to have a baby. I knew it was going to be a son. That's why I said have a son. I knew his name was going to be Noah. And everything changed. I thought I would just like continue with my business in the same way. But we had a major complication in my labor and I needed recovery time. And then what I thought was going to be just a continuation of my business, all of a sudden I shut it all down and went back to a one woman show. I let go of my VAs, my business partner, the whole thing. Because that's what I really, really, truly needed. And I wanted to be with my son. That just became total priority. And I went back to, working as many hours as I could before I now have 10 hours walk it, I not only had to simplify, but my income went way down. But that was a choice. I made a big choice at that time. I'm going to go from working 40, 50, 60 hours because I loved it, or, I'm going to go to 10 hours a week and then grow from there. So we simplified, income went down. And then once we were sleeping again, year 3, then I had energy, was ready to grow again. And then I learned how to have a business where I was working a lot less, but making a lot more. So there's just so many different ebbs and flows, ups and downs, life phases in business and developmental phases of a business, right? And the equation that I'm always asking in these different life decisions to help me make my money decisions and business model decisions are this equation in no particular order: time, energy, money, family, and health. So all the different phases, like before child, in my 30s, tons of energy. I'll work, after child, okay, I need to recover, can't work as much. How do we get savvier with, so time, energy, money, family, and health. Where am I in my family life? Where am I in my health? What's needed? What's going on? Time became like one of my favorite resources. I wanted as much time as possible. So that's at all different junctures: perimenopause, menopause, baby, postpartum, all. I'm asking time, energy, money, family, health. Where am I? And how can I make the best money decision around that? And I have tons of articles and around different times that I did that. But that's one of, and it's not exact like 20% here, 30%. It's more of just a feeling. But that's how I've always been making business and business model decisions based on that. How much money do I want to be making? How much time do I want to be doing that in? What's going on with my energy and family and health at this time?
Mm. You describe perfectly where I'm at right now because my son is 2. So I went through a very similar thing of, when my son was born, it's like, okay, I have to completely redo my business model. Like, I cannot continue to run my business the way that I was before. And it's been a very iterative process to figure out what is going to work for me in this season, because as you were sharing, at least for myself as well, I have not been willing to work the same amount of hours that I was before in this season. Um, this feels like a really beautiful merger of your work and mine, because so much of what I do is trying to get highly sensitive neurodivergent business owners to actually honor both their unique blueprint and how they are wired, and also their season of life is what I hear you talking about here. Is like, don't work as though I am not a mom that has a 2-year-old. I cannot do that. If I try to force myself to fit in the mold of like I was trying to work before, but like I was working before I had my son, I am going to burn out. I'm going to not be effective. And so that's a huge part of the work that I do is making work sustainable for folks by actually helping them learn to stop overriding themselves and start honoring where they're at and who they're created to be and their season of life and all of these things. And I just hear you doing the same in people's money stories and with their money, which is so beautiful.
With their money stories, with their lives, their business
Yeah.
you know, I'm also highly sensitive. I'm also ADD. My son also has we have some mild, you know, mild, to middle ADD stuff going on, and yes, I've had to deeply listen, and I've had to craft my life and business and relationship to money by deeply listening and changing, you know? When I had my son, I had to say to myself daily, "I'm in a transition, I'm in a transition, I'm in a transition," and ask totally new questions like, "I can only work 10 hours a week, so how can I make the most money working 10 hours a week while I'm sleep deprived? Oh, I can lead 2 groups. Got it." So, yes, I'm right there with you, and for me, my work's about money, but it's never just about the money. It's also about life and business and all of the other things that it touches on. So, yeah, I love that we merge there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would love to know how people can connect with you and learn more about your work, Barry.
Yeah, so I am going on sabbatical in August, and but come to my website, so baritessler.com. My 2 books are available everywhere online. My first book is even available on audio, and I know a lot of us, when we're listening to nonfiction, need to listen via audio instead of reading it. I love reading fiction and memoirs, but when it's nonfiction, I have to listen to it, so my first books my first book, The Art of Money: A Life-Changing Guide to Financial Happiness, is all my three-phase method, tons of storytelling of mine and the communities. And then that's the one that's on audio. The second one is the workbook, the Art of Money workbook. It's all journaling questions that you can take around with you. I have a great blog. I have a great podcast. Those will all be available while I'm on sabbatical. I'm finishing up my final ever Art of Money 3-month program. I'm in the second month of it. We'll probably do a flash sale for just my online content around August and September, and then I'm open to creating products, like, as legacy for me down the road, but I'll be taking a year off from teaching, speaking, and doing interviews. So enjoy my books, my podcasts, and all of that will be up, while I am away.
Well, I just hope it's the most wonderful, restorative, restful time for you. And if it's okay with you, I would love to transition. I just have a couple of last closing rapid fire questions just in order for everyone to get to know you a little bit better. Does that feel okay?
Sure, I'll see if I can answer them.
Okay. Well, first is just if there's anything that you would like to say in closing that feels like it needs another moment to wrap up from our podcast today.
I think there was so many little gems in there. So please start practicing one of them, whether that's the body check-in, whether that's starting to understand your money story, whether that's going to the Enneagram to understand more. So just start practicing. I'd say start practicing the body check-in. That's really the first one, which will lead to all the rest. Yeah.
Beautiful. What do you wish people knew about your experience as a highly sensitive person in the world?
Hmm. What do I wish people would know? I mean, at the age of 56, it's I'm not wishing other people know something about it anymore. I'm so comfortable in this part of myself and in being so sensitive and, um, hmm, I don't know if I'm gonna be great at the rapid fire ones, like, nothing's really coming to me.
And maybe it's just that you don't need to feel understood in that way. I think
I
that
don't
is
feel the need to be understood in that way.
yeah, yeah.
I understand myself. I know how to hold this. I know how to work with this. That's the benefit of aging and maturing, is really knowing yourself through and through, knowing who you are, who you're not, what you're suck at, what you're good at, what you suck at, who you are, who you're not, all of that. Like I've spent years working on that.
I
Yeah.
think that's a beautiful answer
Yeah.
and a unique answer within itself. What's the last thing that truly inspired you?
Mm, let's see. Let's see what's coming to me. This is why I can't do TV, because I can't do, like, really quick fire, quick snippet, 30-second bite size,
I'm similar.
it's so much deeper for me. My God, um, mm, I mean, what's the last thing that really inspired me? Let me think about it. I made a really beautiful strawberry rhubarb galette last night,
Ooh,
and I
that
learned
sounds inspirational. Yes.
I learned how to cook when I was 51, so it's just been 5 plus years now, and I learned how to cook and bake during the pandemic year, and it's a really wonderful creative outlet for me.
Ooh, I love that. I'm like getting pictures of this in my mind and getting hungry thinking about it. All right, last one. What consistently brings you deep joy?
Um, my little family and my animals, so my husband of 24 years, our son, who has taught himself how to play guitar in the last 6 months. That is so cool because he's always been an athlete, and then we have 1 dog, 3 cats. We've had up to 5 cats. So my little family in our households, um, and the travel adventures that we do.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Barry, for taking of your time to be here, for sharing this beautiful work that you do. And I know that I'm taking away so many things from this conversation, and I'm sure everyone else who listens is as well. And I just really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and being one of my last interviews before I sail off in the sunset. But someone said, "You're not sailing off in the sunset, you're sailing off into a new sunrise." So,
Yeah, it feels very special. Thank you.